congratulations on a decade. A decade!
This is the Trekzone Spotlight from Australia's first Star Trek fan site, Trekzone.org. G'day everyone, I'm Matt Miller. Welcome. Joining me from Los Angeles for this edition, you may recognise him as Tuvok from Voyager, but he's also a director and producer as well, and he's keeping very busy at the moment. Tim Russ, welcome to the Trekzone Spotlight, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
The reason that we're chatting today is for a production you're working on at the moment. We'll chat about that in a second. But first, your Star Trek journey began when you auditioned for the role of Geordi LaForge. You lost out to LeVar Burton, obviously, but did that make you want a job on Trek more?
Not necessarily. At the time, that was just one of a dozen interviews that I might have had that month. For television or film projects, so it was just another opportunity that came my way, and at the time also I wasn't aware of exactly how close I was or how far I was away from getting that role. I just had a chance to go in and read for it, so the opportunity came and went, and I was looking by next week for something else to do.
While you did miss out on the role of LaForge, you did return to Star Trek in a couple of guest spots before Tuvok, most notably as a saboteur on the TNG episode Starship Mine, and also as a Klingon on DS9's Invasive Procedures. Was that a decision out of the blue, or were you actively looking for work?
Well, by the time I picked up those guest spots on TNG and DS9, I had been reading for guest roles on TNG and DS9 for the past 3 years. 3 years prior to that, I had been coming in to read for these parts as they became available. And in fact, I read for Sadig's role, the Doctor in Deep Space Nine. I read for that regular role as well. I was being considered for that part also. By that time, I was aware of the fact that the shows were very successful. There was 2 of them on at the same time, and I knew that this opportunity was something that I wanted to keep the door open for, and they kept bringing me back. So I thought, well, I'll go back and I'll keep reading, and eventually something may pop. Well, it eventually did. So I was at that point focused in on the fact that these shows were very successful, since they had 2 of them running simultaneously at that point. So yeah, to me it was an opportunity. It was really a pleasure to work with Patrick Stewart, which I did heavily on that episode, taking over the ship, and also as a Klingon, it was some very, very long days in the makeup chair at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, and a lot of catnapping during the shoot day as well. It was a lot of work doing the Klingon role.
Eventually, you landed the role of Tuvok on Voyager. Was that a great change of pace, a fun difference from all those guest spots?
Oh, that was tremendous. The opportunity was wonderful. I mean, and again, if it had been any television series, it would have been a great plus. As it turns out, this particular show and series of shows has such a large fan base around the world and a franchise to go with it that is carried on well beyond the series. And in that way, in that sense, it's very different than in an average television show. If you do an average series, doctor show, lawyer show, no matter how popular they may be, they typically will stop once the show is off the air. That's going to be it. So with this type of show, with Star Trek in particular, there isn't really an end to it. It continues. It goes on from conventions to other types of work that might be related to it. It has a life of its own. So for me, as a career standpoint, it was definitely a big plus. My goal at the time was to get on a show that was going to stay on the air for more than a year. So and that's what my goal was at the time.
You mentioned the convention circuit. It's been 15 years since Voyager ended, but people are still coming out. They're meeting the stars, discussing these episodes that are up to 20 years old. What do you make of all of that?
Mind-blowing. That's all I can say, man. It's just mind-blowing. I can't wrap my head around it. In some sense, you can't believe it. In another sense, you can put it together to some degree. You can put it together logically, if you excuse the term. But it still amazes me that there is that much interest and excitement and anticipation, as it were, to see me in person, because I represented this character on a show that's been off the air for over 15 years, and a franchise that's been on since the 60s. It's just remarkable to me. I can't put my finger on it. There's a magic to the effect that this show has on the fans.
Back in '97, you came to a convention in Perth, and that was my first brush with a Star Trek actor. I think that's what got me started on this website adventure and doing these podcasts. You had lunch with our table and autographed this Future's End VHS. This franchise is enduring. It's stood the test of time, hasn't it?
It's a perfect example. I mean, that weekend I did 3 or 4 cities in Australia in one weekend, doing conventions. I went all the way around. It was Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and I think Adelaide. I just did a circle, and I got to tell you, that was quite a weekend. I spent a lot of time on the plane. In the interim, whether it's, and here's the thing, I mean, it crosses the ocean, it crosses the continents, because I can go from Australia all the way to Great Britain, and there's still the same enthusiastic fan base for the show, and that's something to behold. It's just remarkable. It really is.
Let's move on. As we've said, there is a lot of interest in this franchise, and CBS has finally announced a brand new TV series to premiere in January 2017. What are your thoughts on the show? Do you have any ideas for it?
I have absolutely no idea how it's going to look, what the style of it's going to be. I know that the timeline is the same timeline as JJ's features are, and I'm aware of the fact that I believe that the cast will be an entirely new cast. They're not going to be reviving any of the older characters. They're going to be making an entirely new, fresh start, but at the same timeline as JJ's projects, the features. So that will be very interesting, because what they'll be doing is creating a whole new cast, not unlike TNG, for a series. And so essentially it is like a TNG reboot, except that it takes place in the J.J. Abrams feature film timeline. And that's what they're doing. So we'll see what happens. They're picking up where they left off, and putting on a brand new series. I'm sure that at some point in time, some of the more familiar alien characters will make their presence known, but ultimately the cast members themselves will be a new cast. So I can't say anything until it's actually on the road and ready to go, and all that good stuff to see what it looks like, and otherwise I have no idea, no other information other than anybody else has.
There is a lot of mixed discussion online with varying degrees of reviews. I think at the end of the day, we're just going to have to sit back and wait and see what comes out.
As far back as a month ago, there was no hint of there being any show that was going to be produced, and no new series. Everybody scrambling, trying to sell them their project, and they weren't interested. They weren't interested in any of that. So there was no chance that they were going to put anything on anytime soon. As it turns out, I think because of the nature of this show, in that it is not free television, it's not free CBS, it's not ad-based. This is a subscriber-based network. Because the demographic of the media has changed, since Netflix is so successful, Hulu, Amazon TV, that's where it's all going. And CBS realizes that, so they're going to put on a pay-per-view series. You have to pay a subscriber fee per month to get this network or this part of CBS to watch that show. And that is where their revenue is going to come from to produce the show. And that's how it's going to be done. So the fans themselves will have to pay to see the series.
That segues into crowdfunding. Renegades is one of the big ones that you're involved with. What was it like to receive all this money from random people around the world to help you produce the show?
Well, I was not surprised in the fact that we were able to raise the money that we did worldwide because because we have a fan base. It's already built in. If you were going to compare that to trying to make an independent science fiction film without a crowd fan base, you're going to have a much tougher slog of it. It's really tough to try to get people to donate to a project when there's so many projects out there to start with, but to donate to your project because it doesn't matter how good or bad the story is. It's just a matter of, and many times, who you have in the project just to get people to come to the site. A lot of it is just based on everybody's Facebook following, Twitter following, this kind of thing, to get people to come to the site to donate. It is really, really difficult. For Star Trek, it is much easier because we have a fan base already built in. And there is no new Star Trek on. There's nothing to watch. So a perfect example of that is people donating $5, $10, $20 for around the world to get enough money to make this independent pilot presentation or film or whatever it might be, series of stories independently. Could not have been done or can't be done as easily without having an automatic fan base.
What are your feelings about getting to work with Walter for one last time as Chekhov?
Walter's great. He has a very unpredictable sense of humor. He'll say things to you completely straight-faced, and it takes you a minute to realize that he's completely pulling your leg. He's a lot of fun to work with, and I'm going to look forward to working with him again as he decides to wrap his character up in these stories. It should be wonderful to do it again, and he's a legacy. I mean, his character originally established on the original series is the reason that we're all here still doing Star Trek. If it wasn't for him and his comrades on that show, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do Voyager either without them basically blazing the trail and creating such a large fan base.
We do owe a lot to Gene and the original cast who created this franchise and set the tone for what was to come. I can imagine that they never could have dreamed that almost 50 years after the premiere, the fans would take up the mantle and make their own varieties of Star Trek. Lastly, you are looking at crowdfunding for the next episode of Renegades. Can you give us some details about what that's going to entail?
Well, we're going to be continuing on basically part 2 and 3 sort of arc to finish up the Renegades pilot series, pilot episode. We're going to also have a number of episodes planned after that as well to carry on the cast, to carry on the setting and the environment and storylines. But part 2 and 3 basically are a wrap-up of the opening pilot episode. We don't have the script written yet, the story written yet. We're just working on the just very basic, fundamental outline. So, and also gathering the cast members that we're putting out. We're talking to Robert Beltran, also Terry Farrell, a number of other cast members coming on board to be part of this as well, which is going to expand the cast in that sense and really give us some fun things to play with in terms of story. My concept with Renegades initially was that it was to be wide open. It was to be different than what we've seen before. It was to, to go beyond what Trek has existed before this. And to me, the more we go and open up all of these other possibilities for storylines, to me is the better. That's what I really like. I love the surprises and twists and turns, and I want to see more and more of those, along with the sort of edgy style that we've shot so far. We're going to continue in all of that. It's not going to be your grandmother's Star Trek. It's simple as that.
Make sure you click the link in the description below this video to head over to Renegades on Trekzone.org and check it out. Tim, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Thank you very much. Take care.
And just before I sign off, a new Trekzone.org podcast is coming. It's going to be weekly. It's going to be a lot of fun and occasionally a little bit serious as well. Look out for more details soon right here on Australia's first Star Trek fan site, Trekzone.org. I'm Matt Miller. Bye for now.